And now I'm pleased to welcome this week's main program. It'll be kicked off here by VP of Programs Beth Knox with, of course, Microsoft President Brad Smith.
Thank you, President Jeff. And to my fellow Rotarians, I am so pleased to introduce Brad to you today, as well as the opportunity to facilitate our discussion on a number of topics that I know you'll find relevant and impactful. So let's start first with the introduction. As Microsoft's president, Brad Smith leads a team of more than 1,500 business, legal, and corporate affairs professionals located in 54 countries and operating in more than 120 nations. He plays a key role in spearheading the company's work involving the intersection of technology and society, including cybersecurity, privacy, artificial intelligence, environmental sustainability, human rights, immigration, and philanthropy. And his recent best-selling book, Tools and Weapons, The Promise and the Peril of the Digital Age, that he co-authored with Microsoft's Carol Ann Brown, he urges the tech sector to assume more responsibility and calls for government to move faster to address the challenges that new technologies are creating. He has testified numerous times before Congress and other governments on these key policy issues. Over the past decade, Brad has spearheaded the company's work to advance privacy protection for Microsoft customers and the rights of dreamers and other immigrants. Now, prior to joining Microsoft in '93, Brad was an associate and then partner at the law firm of Covington and Burling. And I love this story as it foreshadows so much about Brad's career. But while he was at the law firm, he is still remembered as the first attorney in the long history of the firm to insist, back in 1986, on having a personal computer on his desk as a condition for accepting a job offer. That just says so much about where he was headed. Brad has also served on the Netflix Board of Directors since 2015 and chairs the Board of Directors of both Kids in Need of Defense, or KIND, and the Washington State Opportunity Scholarship Program. Now, from my perspective, he also made a valuable impact on our community, as well as me personally, when he served as my honorary board chair for the 2018 Special Olympics USA Games. Brad, it was an honor to work with you then, and I'm so pleased that you're joining us here today for Rotary, so welcome. Oh, you're on mute, Brad.
I knew we should have used Microsoft Teams.
Here we go. Can you all hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, I've got a team of people here, so they had to unmute. But hey, first, Beth, it's so great to be with you. It's been too long, and as Beth mentioned, she and I had the opportunity to do so much work together, really under her leadership for the Special Olympics. And I just also want to say at the outset, I'm so excited to hear that you're just a few weeks away from getting back together in person. Last week, I was in Paris, in France, for the first set of meetings that brought a number of people back together from government and industry there. And there's something pretty magical about what we've taken for granted all our lives, the ability to just be with people. So July 14th will be a big day for the Rotary Club. I'm glad to hear it.
We're excited for it as well, Brad. And it's just such so looking forward to the opportunity to be together in person again, even when it feels a little strange to be moving into that next area. So we have a lot of topics to cover today, and I want to kick off. And I know that you could probably talk for the entire hour on a number of these topics. So I've got about 6 questions that I'd love to work through, and then we'll open it up to questions from the members at that point. So let's start with, I wanted to share first of all that this past year, Rotary has had several speakers sharing their insights and stories and perspectives on social justice, racial discrimination, and having those tough conversations on race. Now, about a year ago, you launched Microsoft's Racial Equity Initiative. Can you tell us about the business case for developing this announcement and the pillars of the initiative, as well as the progress you've made over the past year?
Sure. Okay, I'm having, for some reason, there's a delay for us to unmute on our end each time, but we'll work through it. Well, I actually think the business case is very compelling. Just consider the fact that in the United States, just over 14% of our fellow citizens are Black or African American. And then just consider the fact that if we hold back almost 15% of our population, I think we hold back all of us. As a business, I think it's important for us to serve very effectively. That's 15% of our population. I think it's important for us to have this important group of people represented among our own employees so that we reflect the diversity of the country we want to serve. And then I just think we need to reflect upon what in some ways are the very unique set of formidable challenges that Black Americans have faced for more than 4 centuries. Look, this is the only group of people that was brought to this country against its will and literally in chains. It is a group of people that has faced persistent discrimination, even as other groups of immigrants have come after them and then have gone to a point where they haven't faced those challenges to nearly the same degree. I think it's always important to reflect upon the fact that here in Western Washington, we live in a part of the country that has smaller representation by Black and African Americans, but it's a vital part of our community. And I think it's absolutely good. It's right. It's even overdue, frankly, that we're coming together as a business community to do more, to figure out how we can put our products to work, how we can put our procurement to work, how we can put our community initiatives to work to better serve the Black and African American community.
Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, obviously, this is an ongoing initiative that we all have to take very seriously and focus on. And I know Rotary feels the same way about that. Another consequence of the pandemic was that it forced our world to utilize technology in countless new ways and to a much deeper degree. Last summer, Microsoft launched another initiative to help 25 million people worldwide acquire the digital skills needed for a 21st century economy. And recently, you gave an update to this announcement with LinkedIn CEO Ryan Roslansky. Can you tell us about Microsoft's plans to provide these digital skills around the globe?
Yes, definitely. And just, are you all hearing me?
Yes.
Okay, good. I would actually start by analogizing to what I think is one of the greatest contributions that Rotary has made over the years. I mean, just think about what Rotary has done to help conquer polio. You took an important challenge and you figured out how to scale it to have a global reach. You know, that in many ways is what we at Microsoft are trying to do when we think about what everyone around the world is going to need when it comes to better development of digital skills. Doesn't matter what job you have. It doesn't matter whether you have a job at all. Doesn't matter what age you are. You know, we're all going to have to learn new things in the years to come and do it on an ongoing basis. So what we've done in part with LinkedIn, which Microsoft owns, is brought more digital skilling content to life, made it available free of charge, partnered with nonprofits around the world. We've funneled now tens of millions of dollars of grants into organizations on a global basis. And we've now reached more than 40 million people around the world. One of the things I am most pleased about is we're actually counting and really being accountable for what we're doing, not just in learning content, but in certifications and whether we're helping people find jobs. My favorite factoid, we not only reached 250 countries and territories, we had more than 90 people in Antarctica take advantage of this program. I didn't know there were more than 90 people in Antarctica. So we all have the opportunity to learn something new every day.
Well, that's incredible that you've nearly doubled your original goal for the reach. So that's fantastic. On this, you're going to hear a lot of repetition on the pandemic-related questions here. But another consequence of it was the necessity for us to work from home. Can you talk to us about how remote work has gone for the employees at Microsoft?
What I would say is for all of us, thank goodness if we were going to live through a pandemic, it came in 2020 rather than 2010. because otherwise we would have just spent the last year staring at a phone, hearing some disembodied voice through a speaker and having conference calls. Technology has advanced to a point where it just enables us to do a lot more working together, socializing together, or just look at this meeting, having a meeting together than we ever could have done a decade ago. I think that's a great thing. Now we'll come out of this pandemic, and I think we'll all learn together how we want to continue to use these capabilities. I'll be fascinated to see 5 years from now, whether if you miss a Rotary meeting in Seattle, it means because you're traveling and you want to go to a local meeting, or do you want to Zoom in or use perhaps Microsoft Teams so that you can attend virtually a meeting in your home city? I think that just captures a world of new choices we are all going to have. And what I hope we'll do is figure out how to blend these capabilities together. I think right now we're at a moment in time where everybody thinks like, will I do this or will I do that? You know, will I go see a doctor or will I have a telehealth visit? It will depend on what your ailment is. You know, will I work from home or will I go to the office? It may depend on what your job is. It may depend on whether you have young kids that you want to be with in your home. So mostly I would say, we will all learn together in the next year, just like we've learned together in the past year and a half. And I hope that what we will find is that technology, including from Microsoft, really creates more diversity, more choice, and more flexibility, for the diverse group of people we need to serve.
And Brad, as a follow-up to that, do you think that a company like Microsoft or any other business loses anything if too many of its people are working remotely for too long?
Well, I think it's really going to vary. And I think that it'll be great for some people with some jobs and some needs to be able to, say, work from home. But I actually think it's good for people to actually meet people, to see people, to have the kinds of creative, informal, collegial conversations. Yeah, I think it's probably why Rotary has its meetings over lunch. You could have had it at any time of day. Doesn't need to even be over a meal, but almost every Rotary club anywhere in the world actually meets over a meal. And I think that says something about human nature. So I think we should use technology to add to the richness of our lives, but not forget that there are certain aspects of human nature that really require human interaction in person. And that's worth cherishing as well.
Well, I couldn't agree more. And I think Rotary is a great example of an organization that's wrestling with what this next phase of technology and in-person looks like. Do you have some thoughts on where the hybrid version of using technology and having meetings or gatherings in person, what that's going to look like in the future?
Well, I think technology will make that better. It needs to, and that's obviously what we're focused on here at Microsoft with Teams and a variety of new offerings that we will have, including some we're going to talk about tomorrow when we talk about advances in Windows. The truth is, what is a hybrid meeting? Well, I think it is a meeting where some people are in the same room and some people are connected from some other location. Well, then let's recognize the obvious. We've all been having hybrid meetings since the conference call was invented. Now let's figure out how to use virtual technology and video technology to make hybrid meetings better. And some of this we've already done, I think, all collectively as individuals, as users, as well as tech companies at an accelerated pace over the next year and a half. But I think we have so many opportunities to make it better in the years ahead, and you're going to see us roll out new features. I think it's about making the meeting better for the people who are not in the room, as well as those who are in the room. It's about how you display screens. It's what you put on the screens. It's how you create connections between people with more cameras, including perhaps just on their laptops. But I'll give you one of my own personal litmus tests for a point in the future when we'll know that hybrid meetings are where they should be. I've always had this belief that every meeting needs a little bit of laughter, because when people laugh, we get to do it together. There's something that is actually important from a very human standpoint. If there's one thing I've missed over the last year and a half, it's having people laugh on mute. If you say something funny, you actually don't even know whether anybody actually thought it was funny at all. We need to get to a world where we not only have great hybrid meetings, but it lets people laugh together. I believe there will come a point when we will get there, and I hope you'll see Microsoft leading the way.
I think that is so true. And I do think it's going to be an interesting mindset when we when we work toward this hybrid combination, because we really have two different audiences that have different needs, whether you are in person or watching it virtually. So it'll be an interesting transition that we go through.
One last thing I would say, Beth, is, you know what? We're going to figure this out. We're all going to figure it out together. It's an interesting moment in time, because I think around the world, I saw it in Paris last week, it's almost people are obsessing, how's this going to work? And I sometimes feel that maybe it's driving anxiety that isn't necessarily productive. We will all figure out how to do this together. Just think about one fact. All of us, our entire lives, we've had the opportunity to meet with people in person, and we've had the opportunity to talk to them on the telephone. Did you ever go out for dinner or to a meeting and have the entirety of the conversation consumed by, oh, what are we going to do? Are we going to talk on the telephone, or are we going to see each other in person? Video is the new telephone. It enables us to connect in new ways. And I just think it's a natural progression that we will sort out. When do we want to connect by video? When do we want to get together in person? It's going to be both as a significant part of the way we live our lives.
Well, thank you for that. I think that's so true. And it is helpful to remind ourselves to not get too caught up in the uncertainty of that future. So thank you for that. Shifting gears just a little bit here, you've stated, Brad, that broadband has become the electricity of the 21st century. The pandemic has also highlighted the importance of broadband access to the way that we live, learn, and work. Can you talk about why this is so important and what Microsoft is doing to help close that broadband gap?
Yeah, well, and it's a question I love, Beth, as you know. I'm always hesitant to say that something as bad as a pandemic can have a silver lining in any way, but if there is a silver lining, it perhaps is the fact that it has caused people to really look at and appreciate this problem that was staring us in the face for quite a number of years. And that's the fact that some people have access to broadband and others do not. Think about something like a telehealth visit. If you don't have broadband, your ability to take advantage of it is very limited. Or just take the most practical and obvious issue of the last 18 months. Try going to school if you're in the 4th grade and you're in a home that doesn't have a broadband connection or doesn't have a laptop. And these things really need to come together. One thing I've literally spoken about across the United States is Ferry County in Eastern Washington. This is a county that typically has the highest unemployment rate in Washington state. It is a county that the Federal Communications Commission 4 years ago was saying had plentiful broadband access. But as we found, no, there was no broadband available to people who live there. And I just think it is a national imperative that we bring broadband to every home and to every business, the same way a century ago we brought electricity to virtually every home and every business. And I'm really pleased that in Washington, D.C. today, even when people disagree on some aspects of, say, a national infrastructure bill, there is a broad and bipartisan consensus that we need to close the broadband gap. And I believe we can. And I think with the right level of leadership and federal support, we will, and it will be a gap we close this decade. It is something that we at Microsoft have not just been advocating for, but supporting with what we call our Airband program. We committed in 2017 that we would bring broadband to 3 million people by July 4th next year, and we're going to top that goal. I think we'll hit 4 million, but there's many more that need to be served.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. We're going to shift gears one more time to, well, more than once here, but another one that is impacting us all is climate change. Now, in January of 2020, Microsoft announced, again, ambitious plans to go carbon negative by 2030. And by that, you mean not just being carbon negative year over year, but actually turning back the clock to figure out all the carbon Microsoft has produced since 1975, and then counterbalancing that number by 2050. That is just incredible. And this last January, you gave a one-year report on progress made to date. Can you tell us about the progress so far, and what do you see as the biggest challenges to make in order to ensure that that happens?
Yeah, no, it's a topic I've had the opportunity to learn a lot more about over the past couple of years, and I think it's, for unsurprising reasons, one of the most important issues of our time. Yeah, for Microsoft, what it really means is two things. It means that we need to get our own house in order by reducing our carbon emissions and then purchasing the removal of carbon to not just balance, but as you quite rightly put it, negate the historical emissions for which Microsoft was responsible since we were founded in 1975. And then we're really focused on using digital technology to help all of our customers worldwide. Because that's what it will take to measure and record and report and then ultimately reduce carbon emissions. For many, you might say, well, how much does a tech company really emit? The answer is, if we're not careful, quite a bit, because our data centers have such an enormous electrical footprint around the world. The tech sector has become one of the largest users of electricity. So we've committed that by 2025, we'll be running our data centers 100% on renewable energy. We're making good progress in reductions. We made the largest removal purchase, 1.3 million metric tons last year in the history of business. But mostly what I would say, especially for anybody with a business background, and there are so many in Rotary, ultimately, this is like everything else in business. You better be able to measure it. And we're going to need a globally standardized capability so we can all measure accurately and reliably how much carbon is emitted in every aspect of our lives. And that's a big part of what we're focused on in 2021.
Okay, so I have one last question before we turn it over to the members for their questions. And the topic is about vaccines. Now, you obviously were a mass vaccination site at Microsoft. So I'm curious a little bit about your learnings from that, as well as how you see vaccines playing a role in the future, whether it's requiring employees to have vaccinations, the consequences of that or not. Tell me where Microsoft is fitting into this topic.
Well, first, let's, I think, reflect for a moment on what history will probably say was the great miracle in humanity's response to COVID-19. Faster development of vaccines than for any affliction in human history. And then let's remember, let's use these vaccines, please, and encourage all of our friends and neighbors and colleagues, to go get a vaccine unless they have, a health ailment or some, real religious objection to doing so, because we haven't yet reached everybody. At Microsoft, we're definitely encouraging our employees. We're like most businesses, we're not requiring them, but we're following the trends around the country and around the world. I'm encouraged because most of the data that we're seeing is that our employees are getting vaccinated. The data that we see in King County is pretty darn sensational. I mean, we live in one of the most heavily vaccinated counties right now in the world, which is a really positive place to be. We did stand up our own mass vaccination site. I'm really pleased with what we did. I will say two things. One, it reflected a great partnership with the state, with the Department of Health, with the governor, with King County. and with the business community. We really stood up the ability to move thousands of people through a day, in part because Starbucks came over and they said, we know how to move people and make it convenient for them. And they helped design the Microsoft mass vaccination site. But the other thing we really did was focus with King County on reaching people that were harder to reach. So from day one, what we decided to do as a company is just pay for 100% of the costs ourselves. Was about $4 million a month, so that people wouldn't have to worry about insurance or anything else. That enabled us to then really reach out to, say, a community like home care health givers, people who often spoke, in some cases, a different language. We had interpreters on site. We figured out how to reach them, how to get them to Microsoft. And I'm just excited, to be honest. I'm excited that, we have this big campus in Redmond. Beth, you've been here, but most people have not. What a great reason to come to Microsoft to get a free vaccine. I'm just glad we were able to serve, talk about service before self. It's always nice when you find a way to do that. That's what vaccination meant for us.
Well, I really do appreciate that, and thank you for the role that you played in helping, certainly King County. I mean, we've achieved just a phenomenal goal in hitting that 70% of fully vaccinated and just by next week. So that's very exciting, and we appreciate Microsoft's role in getting there. We're going to turn it over to questions from our members now, but I wanted to give the first question to President Jeff, who is also in the technology industry, and let him start it off, and then we'll go to the rest of the Rotarians. Jeff?
Thank you. And Brad, good to see you again. We met briefly when you spoke with us last during Mark Wright's year about 3 years ago. So these are going to be lightning round types because we've got a lot of questions from our members, but I have to throw two of them out. One, I really want to thank you for what Microsoft has done in supporting journalism. Do you want to comment just briefly about that initiative? I bet our members don't know about it and the impact it's having in small towns across America, including Appleton. And then as a follow-up, I think in an industry, the tech industry is vastly under investing in security. And I think that it's incumbent upon all of us to revisit this topic because of the recent activity and the increasing use of open source, which brings along new threats. So take your pick.
Well, let me talk about journalism. And first, it's great to see you, and I will be brief, otherwise it won't be much of a lightning round. I will just say this. We need to address the needs of local journalism. Half of the counties in the United States are down to one newspaper or fewer. More than 200 counties no longer have a single newspaper. And I think in large part, technology has sort of moved advertising revenue, from newspapers to a small number of tech companies. So we're working on ways to redress that. Part, it's public policy advocacy. In part, we're thinking about how we can use our technology platforms to better serve newspapers and journalists. In part, we're investing money with community foundations and then bringing people together to help regional newspapers collaborate, including in my hometown, Appleton, Wisconsin, as you mentioned. And then I'll just connect it with, and let's make sure we're protecting newspapers and journalists from cybersecurity threats because they are often targeted, especially we see this in certain areas, and we worry about it, for example, with nation state attacks and the like. But let's also just protect everybody. We're clearly seeing a very rapidly changing and increasing environment for cybersecurity threats. It's a big priority for what I'm spending time on and what we're doing as a company.
Thank you. Ken, over to you.
All right, Brad, good to see you. All right, we are going to try and do a lightning round. I think I've got 10 minutes and I got 10 questions. You ready for this? Let's go. What is Microsoft doing to protect the security of international communication that ensures that bad actors cannot hack into the system and punish those in insecure countries, Afghanistan, feel like, for communicating with foreigners?
Well, I think it really comes down to, number one, providing encrypted communications capabilities to people. That's probably the most important thing we can do. And, that's why, in some of these countries, and Afghanistan's probably a good example, you see something like Skype, which we offer, still used quite broadly. It has that encryption capability. I do think the second thing we're really focused on is just, working with governments to increase legal protection and international rules to protect against this, because I don't think it's something that technology alone will ultimately solve.
Okay. Brad, thanks for reinforcing our decision to resume in-person options for meeting attendance. Question: how do you see the importance of service projects and philanthropy to aid economic recovery?
Well, I actually think this pandemic has shined a light on the power of philanthropy and the importance of humanitarian action. And just to give you one recent example that I'm very enthused about, the challenges in India in the last 2 months have just been enormous. I mean, it's just a humanitarian tragedy as COVID cases increase there. And American businesses came together, including Microsoft and our philanthropic arm, Microsoft Philanthropies. We've worked together in new ways. We've worked together with the US government. And I think there is an important opportunity for us as a country to ask ourselves, how do we bring together nonprofits? How do we bring together civic organizations like Rotary? How do we bring together companies? And how do we bring together our government? So when we're facing humanitarian challenges, we can do more by doing it together. This is a new capability that we can develop as a nation, and I think we should.
All right, very good. I'm curious about your thoughts regarding facial recognition technology. There are a lot of questions regarding its accuracy. This is right now. This is not me. This is someone else. I am my Auntie Phyllis. Are they accurate?
Well, first I would say the accuracy is improving rapidly, and it will continue to do so, because people worried quite rightly a lot about bias in facial recognition. But the truth is, inaccuracy is an error, which is just a fancy way of saying, well, this product doesn't work the way we want. So I think the accuracy will improve, but the questions around facial recognition will remain. How can it be used? How can it be abused? How can we be protected from those abuses? And Washington actually passed a very strong law a year ago, especially for public sector, government and police use of facial recognition. It's something that we actually think is world leading at this point in terms of some interesting public policy innovation.
All right. How is Microsoft helping address the new risks, dangers associated with our mass adoption to new technology, e.g. the increase of ransomware, tech illiterate lawmakers, privacy concerns, but here in this country, this state, and around the world?
Well, that's 3 meaty topics. So with 60 seconds, let me try to generalize. I think the first thing we have to do for every one of these issues is understand the technology and how it works and what are its strengths and what are its vulnerabilities. And so I think that's one area where we as a company are trying to lean in. Second, I think it is incumbent upon us to assume a proactive responsibility to put guardrails around our products to ensure that they don't lead to unintended consequences or abuses. And third, I think we have entered an era where law needs to play a role, regulation and governments need to play a role. That's the way most healthy markets work. It's great that automakers care about our safety, but it's also good that we do have regulations that ensure the safety of our cars. And I think digital technology has entered an era where we'll need to think about it the same way.
Yeah, okay. How soon do you think, oh, that's funny. How soon do you think working collaboratively in VR will become common, similar to how we are working virtually today?
Well, VR obviously refers to virtual reality. I guess I'm probably more bullish on what we call augmented reality. These are the kinds of glasses that we create that lets you see people and images transposed on top of the glasses. And that is rapidly becoming a reality, in part in entertainment, but more than that, There's a lot of business applications. You see it for airline companies using, for example, to maintain jet engines from Boeing. Microsoft has a very large contract with the United States Army now entering a production phase, so that when our troops go into battle, instead of night vision goggles, they have augmented reality glasses, and that still gives them night vision capability, but it enables them to access a whole lot more data. And I think that really is the future.
Personally, one of my favorite things in the entire world, and I hope that everybody can hurry up because I want to use it all the time. What is Microsoft's thoughts on the, I was waiting for this question. What's Microsoft's thoughts on the new capital gains income tax bill that passed this year in our state, and how having a capital gains may be a statewide income tax will impact their ability to attract, that's you, and retain employees?
Well, I get this one I can answer in less than 60 seconds. It is not an issue that we have yet spoken on, so I probably won't make this the first moment to do so. Let's just say we're thinking about it.
Wow, that's well done. That was good. All right. That's funny. There's the humor that you were talking about inside of meetings right there. With all the hacking, malware, and ransomware, security issues are becoming even more critical. What is Microsoft doing to protect the virtual world?
Well, I think we just have to continue to recognize we're sort of the front line. We are the first defender. We have one of the highest responsibilities to keep adding to cybersecurity protection for all of our services, and then making it easier for everyone to use them. What I would say to everyone is it almost doesn't matter what attack you've read about in the last 6 months. The interesting reality is that if the customers involved had just deployed the cybersecurity protection that exists already, the impact on their business or on their data would have been very limited. And so what is it that people should do? Number one, if you haven't yet moved to the cloud, please consider it, because when you're in the cloud, we update all of the hardware. We're able to monitor the services. We're able to let you know if you're being attacked. But beyond that, use anti-malware protection. Use what's called multi-factor authentication for your employees, so that a theft of a password doesn't open up the entire network. Use what is called least privileged access. In other words, if you have an IT administrator and you have a network of any size, give them access only to the part of the network that they need to do their job, so that if their credentials are ever stolen, you don't have access or free reign given to cyber criminals or nation state threats. So in short, we need to do more. We need to make it easier for you to do more. We need all of us to do more together.
Okay, very good. How does Microsoft help keep children safe from online predators?
Well, this is a huge issue for our industry. It's something that we've been working on for almost 2 decades. And many of you may recognize the name Courtney Gregoire, certainly the last name Gregoire. She's our Chief Digital Safety Officer. Courtney previously worked in part as a port commissioner, but she is leading our work. And we are focused on a wide variety of protections across our services, both for the protection of children, but also for many other threats as well, including protecting against extremist violence and that type of content. When there was the terrorist massacre in Christchurch, New Zealand, it really opened everybody's eyes. Oh my gosh, people are using live streaming to webcast a mass shooting. And so, Courtney's really championed for us what has been a global initiative to work across the tech sector and with governments that put more protections in place so that these kinds of abuses cannot recur.
Her mom was on the show last week. Nice tie-in. I like it.
Yes, well, I'm the one person who can say I work very closely on a weekly and sometimes daily basis with both Chris Gregoire and Courtney Gregoire, and they're both sensational.
I met her a couple of years ago when she was port commissioner. She is a dynamo. That's cool. All right, I've got 3 left and not enough time, so we'll do this fast. Is supply chain distribution i.e. the chip shortage affecting Microsoft, or is the business somewhat immune from that being software focused?
Microsoft is definitely affected by potential shortages of chips, just like every part of the tech sector and virtually the entire economy. But you can think about it in so many ways for us. You can think about the Xboxes and the Surface devices that we manufacture. You can think about the laptops and PCs that run Windows that are really produced by our most important partners, but also think about the fact that we're one of the largest purchasers of chips to go into server computers that you will find anywhere on planet Earth because of our data center footprint. So we are spending an enormous amount of energy, as you would expect, in managing our own supply chain.
So I am going to ask the last question. You got a minute and a half to answer this. And if you need a therapist, I'll send you a number. I'm curious what keeps you up at night.
Well, I will use this to pivot to my last message to all of us. Let's stay up at night to ask ourselves, what do we want Seattle and King County and Western Washington to look like, not this year, but in the year 2030? This is a moment in time when we are not just coming out of this pandemic, but let's ask ourselves, how do we make this a more affordable community where people can afford to live? That's a big issue that we at Microsoft have been working to address. How do we make the strides that I know we all really want to make, yet have found so difficult when it comes to addressing something like homelessness? How do we reimagine the sustainable city and future that Seattle and Puget Sound are going to need to represent? How do we enable more people to get the skills, to get the education that they're going to need to succeed? This is a great time, I think, especially as we get back together in person. Let's have these conversations. Let's raise our ambition level. Let's ask ourselves how we as businesses help make that a reality.
Yeah, that's awesome. Brad, the last time I saw you was on top of the Space Needle, which has to be the most random thing I'm going to say today. Thank you so much for being on the show today. Awesome. Really great conversation. Beth, thank you for driving it. I really enjoyed this. I know we all did. There's a couple of questions left. There's some kudos to you too, Brad. So thank you for being on the show.
Great being with all of you.